vaccination is very important, but not enough. I'm worried to see in the projections of the IMF and the World Bank that there is an expected growth of the international economy of 6% this year, but only 3.2%, if I remember well, in the African continent. And it's absolutely essential that African countries receive the financial support they need at the present moment to protect their citizens and to be able to relaunch their economies.
The statement made by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres came well before 11 African heads of state met last month with the World Bank to call for about $100 billion in hardship funding to help dig the economies out of the hole caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, although most African nations have been spared, the levels of death and infection caused by the coronavirus in other parts of the globe, some economists say that the lockdowns, travel restrictions, and trade slowdowns have thrown sub-Saharan Africa into a recession. Hello, I'm Demiake Mwakaliele, and this is Our Voices. Today, we'll take a look at the economic impact of the pandemic for African nations and the uphill battle policymakers have as they continue to work towards stronger economic growth to improve their citizens' livelihoods. And we'll also examine other factors that have influenced their bottom line and question if the continent is sliding into a recession or heading to recovery. Street market traders in Uganda were forced to bike, walk long distances, or just sleep in the market following a transportation lockdown aimed to stop the spread of the coronavirus that ended in July. Although President Yoweri Museveni has slowly eased the restriction, many analysts say the lockdown is still squeezing the ability of many people to earn a living. Halima Athumani reports from Kampala.
With coronavirus infections soaring and hospitals overwhelmed, Uganda has reimposed a lockdown on movement through July. Transport is banned and only essential workers are allowed into the city. While the aim is to save lives, making a living is once again a struggle for traders like Sauda Namaga, one of many forced to sleep in the market. She wants Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni to ease the restrictions.
We are selling rotten produce, all the bananas, as you can see. We don't have buyers, so we are asking the president, and those who talk to him should tell him to relax the orders. Those who are able to walk to town should be allowed to come and buy.
The situation is even worse for shops not selling food, which Ugandan authorities ordered closed. Ugandan police are being deployed to enforce the commands. Area Chairman Bashir Mwonge says without help, many shops won't survive.
If you keep imposing a lockdown, what do you think is going to happen? This means the country's economy is falling because there's no work being done. We have been appealing to the president to help by suspending rent payments. The economy is crashing because people can no longer maintain their businesses, even when you reopen.
Ugandans living in the countryside are forced to walk for hours to get to town. Lydia Nambugo walked more than 5 kilometers to withdraw money from her savings to feed her family, but the bank office was closed.
I've
been selling takeaway food, and I've been earning little money to take care of my family. But we've been locked down, and we don't know what's coming next. The government isn't going to give us food again. They should at least give us some of our little savings.
With Uganda's first lockdown in March 2020, the government gave flour and beans to the urban poor, which many hope will be repeated.
We are going to use some simple means of delivering support to you. And the vulnerable people are known.
Meanwhile, many Ugandans can only wait for this latest wave of COVID-19 infections to recede while doing their best to keep their heads above water. Halima Athumani for VOA News, Kampala, Uganda.
1 year into the COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya, thousands of families are struggling with deepening poverty and unemployment. A survey by the charity Tawenza shows 60% of Kenyan families can no longer afford 3 meals per day. Brenda Mulinya reports from Nairobi.
Nearly a year ago, Rebecca Adagala took pride in her ability to feed her grandchildren.
She was able to afford 3 meals a day from the money she made at her grocery business in this informal settlement in Nairobi. But now, 1 year after COVID-19 struck Kenya, Adagala can barely afford 1 meal a day.
Sometimes we only take water for dinner and sleep. If we are lucky, maybe a family member who hasn't lost their job can buy us some maize flour. We cook, and life goes on.
The Kenyan government's efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 with lockdowns have led to rising unemployment. More than 1.7 million people lost their jobs in the first 4 months of the pandemic. A survey by Toweza, a non-governmental group, shows that in the last 6 months of 2020, more Kenyans were worried about where their next meal would come from.
7 out of 10 of the households say that they fear economic impact much more than health impact.
A food pantry run by a charity group in Kenya is in high demand as people without jobs cannot feed themselves. Nowhere is the need greater than in the informal settlements, said the charity director, John Gadungu.
We are not able even to go there freely to distribute the food that we used to distribute, because you found since most people are not going to work, they remained in the villages and in their houses. So when there is, they hear that there is food being distributed, there is almost some stampede.
Even though Kenya's coronavirus containment measures have hurt the economy, the government says it is determined to balance the scales by keeping the public safe, while also ensuring people are able to put food on their table.
The government has also been able to set programs to put money in the pockets of those who have lost their livelihoods by initiating a weekly stipend of 1,000 per household.
But for many like Rebecca Adagala, they have not yet received this government stipend. Adagala hopes the government finds a way to safely return life to normal so that she can resume her economic activities and feed her family with dignity. Brenda Molinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
The coronavirus pandemic has made a deep mark in Africa's megacities such as Johannesburg, Lagos, and Nairobi. But more than half of the continent's populations live in rural areas, which large-scale lockdowns have effectively sealed off. VOA's Anita Powell visited one small South African town to see how its residents are coping under pandemic restrictions.
It's hard to see COVID-19 here in the village of Kamatsamo in rural South Africa. On a recent day, most residents weren't diligently wearing masks outdoors, as is the law. But the pandemic is deeply felt here, say residents, who point not to death tolls, but to economic and social devastation.
It's been a problem, like a really problem, a big problem to me.
22-year-old Pakale Sambo wants to become a carpenter and eventually set up her own carpentry shop. But that dream ended when the pandemic arrived.
Because I can't continue with my carpentry studies. I just stopped. And I can't even start my own business because the money is too low. People are complaining they can't even buy these fruits. They are complaining, they say it's too much money, I'm being expensive or something. They say that.
Data about COVID's impact on Africa's urban-rural divide is still being gathered. But one recent study from a group of Nigerian and British researchers warns that rural African communities risk being left behind in the pandemic because of the lack of amenities like good road networks and strong infrastructure like clinics and hospitals. Big efforts such as vaccination campaigns are much more difficult in rural environments, says Freddie Nkosi, country director of an NGO in the Democratic Republic of Congo that focuses on remote, rural, low-income countries.
You need to keep the vaccines in the cold chain environments, and you need to train the people who will transport the vaccines. You need to train the people who will be using the vaccines, the health workers. So getting all these different pieces of puzzles in a very short period of time, that's very, very challenging.
For a town like Kamatsamo, which has 23,000 residents and is less than a day's drive from Johannesburg, that is doable. And for that reason, residents say they prefer to stay here.
It's better to stay in a small place because we have small people than the big cities, because in the big cities there's a lot of people. Some of them They don't know about COVID. They are stubborn. They don't know about. They don't care about that things.
I think around the rural area is much better than the city because there's not a lot of people. Actually, I think it's safe to be in the rural area.
But Nkosi says his experience in the largest country in sub-Saharan Africa is concerning. What little of it he gets to see.
I traveled in over 5 provinces so far, where I see disparity between what is happening in the urban area or in Kinshasa and what is happening in most of the rural areas, where, for example, if I have to start with the health workers and community health workers, in the rural areas, they have limited access to personal protective equipment compared to those who are in the urban areas.
But rural African life has always been complex and resilient. This town has existed in some form for hundreds of years, through wars, epidemics, and upheavals. This pandemic, in a way, is just a blip in its history. Anita Powell, VOA News, Kamatsamo, South Africa.
We're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, we'll examine how politics, violent insurgents, and cuts in foreign aid have impacted economic growth on the continent in addition to the pandemic. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're with Our Voices. Nigeria's Chamber of Commerce has warned that increasing violence and abductions are turning off investors and damaging the economy. Officials say unless security is improved, the economy will not recover from the coronavirus pandemic. Timothy Obiezo reports from Abuja, Nigeria.
Rosemary Akwachike started her coconut processing company as a side job 6 years ago. But as awareness about the health benefits of coconut oil and other coconut derivatives grew, so did her business. So she decided to give it more attention and approach investors for expansion. But Nigeria's insecurity affected her ability to source her major raw material, coconut. Now, she's struggling to stay afloat.
It has actually impacted negatively. Like I said previously, I've tried to maintain prices, but I don't know how much longer I can do that with the, incessant, the continuous increase, really.
Rosemary must increase her prices to remain in operation or gather her own raw materials to reduce overhead costs. But even that, she says, is too dangerous these days.
I'm actually trying to set up a coconut plantation in my village, in my local government, but then you don't want to be on the road always.
Nigeria is seeing high levels of crime and insecurity across the country, including militant attacks in the northeast, clashes between communities, and large-scale kidnappings for ransom. The country's Chamber of Commerce blames the situation for a recent downturn in foreign investment. Public finance analyst Isaac Botti says the situation is affecting Nigeria's economy.
The Nigerian economy has been contrasting significantly. As of 2019, the economy contrasted by 8-point-something%. As we are talking, we are at negative, minus 2-point-something%. And this is to tell you that foreign investment is dwindling in the face of insecurity.
Foreign investors account for about 60% of Nigeria's overall investments. Between 2018 and today, investors pulled out about $4.5 billion from Nigeria's stock market, according to the Nigerian Exchange Limited. But Ken Ife, a chief economic strategist at West African bloc ECOWAS, says the COVID-19 pandemic is also to blame for the outflow.
Our capital importation last year in first quarter was just over $8 billion. But suddenly it crashed in the second quarter to $1.5 billion, 1.4 in the third quarter, and 1.5 in the first. So in aggregate terms, 2020, we had only $9.6 billion capital importation, compared to double that the previous year.
Experts say unless the security situation is addressed, businesses and Nigeria's economy will continue to suffer consequences. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
Somalia this year was hit by a double punch, a second wave of coronavirus and political turmoil over elections that threatened to spark armed conflict. But while political tensions cooled, the impact on the economy is ongoing. Mohammed Sheikh Noor reports from Mogadishu.
Somalia is recovering from the threat of civil war when troops in April took sides over holding elections, and a controversial term extension for those in power that was later dropped. Over 100,000 Mogadishu residents who had sought refuge outside the capital have been returning to their homes. But Somali analysts say the impact is still being felt economically.
When there is a fear of looming clashes, prices of goods escalate, and people save their few resources for future consumption. Many banks in Mogadishu experienced massive withdrawals, and many more fled the city, seeking shelter on safer places.
The political tension is added to the economic woes from the coronavirus pandemic. A second wave of infections is swept through Somalia from February, doubling confirmed cases and spiking official deaths by 48%. Somalia's tour and travel agencies are among the businesses most affected.
All travel agencies have laid off staff, and their families were dependent on them. The COVID-19 pandemic has severely affected travel agencies at large. Our agency was badly impacted, including income and operation. This led to redundancies and loss of livelihoods for many workers.
Somalia's hoteliers are also suffering.
This hotel's lifeline is dependent on both foreign and local visitors. 100% of our foreign clients have stopped coming, while the number of local visitors drastically dropped due to the impact of the coronavirus on the economy.
Officials say Somalia's economy will take time to recover.
The COVID-19 affected the entire world, and in our country, it coincided with the first year of the National Development Plan, which my ministry was set to implement in a period of 5 years. Our plans have significantly been disrupted, with a negative impact on aviation, private businesses, remittances, and many others.
Meanwhile, Somali youth are helping remove traces of the April clashes between security factions that sparked fears of civil war amid a pandemic.
The bright future that I am seeing is through the perfect example of the youth behind me painting the road. It is the hope of our entire population.
Mohammed Sheikh Noor for VOA News, Mogadishu, Somalia.
The COVID-19 pandemic's impact on economies has led to cuts in foreign aid from donors like Britain, which this month slashed its budget aid by $5.5 billion, hitting those on the ground in Africa. The funding loss is felt in Burkina Faso, where one group that helps thousands of survivors of gender-based violence and rape could be shut down. Henry Wilkins reports from Kaya.
Marie Ouedraogo, whose name has been changed to protect her identity, fled her village in northern Burkina Faso when gunmen linked to the Islamic State attacked. She trekked through the bush for 3 days seeking refuge, but was then seized by a group of terrorists.
They told me to put my daughter down, and one of them hit me with the back of his gun, and I fell to the ground. All of them raped me. There were 6 of them. When they finished, they discussed whether they should kill me, but they decided it is useless to kill a woman. They got on their motorbikes and left.
When she reached the relative safety of Kaya the next day, she was directed to the non-profit group Marie Stopes. Marie Stopes provides family planning for women in countries undergoing humanitarian crises like Burkina Faso's, which has displaced more than 1.3 million people.
The woman from Marie Stopes immediately gave me some morning after pills and gave me advice as well. I was still traumatized. I could neither eat nor breastfeed my daughter. The lady encouraged me to eat the food she gave me and told me that my life is still worth living.
Marie Stopes is primarily supported by British aid money, but Britain has cut its annual aid budget, and so have other countries such as Australia, Japan and Saudi Arabia. This will impact Marie Stopes in Burkina Faso.
We think that with these cuts, these beneficiaries will be left on their own because we do not have the funding to be able to support them. And also, many of our support workers will be out of a job.
The cuts will affect large numbers of women, says the head of Marie Stopes, Burkina Faso.
Overall, we've been able to record more than 500,000 beneficiaries over 2 years. I would also like to point out Burkina Faso's global context of insecurity, which makes women even more vulnerable.
The largest international non-profits say the shockwaves of the cuts will be felt by people across Africa in all kinds of situations and will result in deaths.
So for countries like the UK and others to be cutting their aid budgets during a global pandemic is extremely short-sighted, and we know it will put the fight back against poverty by many decades. So the UN Secretary General, for example, called these cuts a death sentence, and it really is that stark for many people.
Marie Stopes in Burkina Faso could be forced to close most or all of its outreach programs next year if it does not get its funding. For women who fall victim to gang rape, like Ouedraogo, it will mean they may no longer receive emergency birth control or support. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Kaya, Burkina Faso.
Do you expect to see African nations recover economically despite the pandemic, or slump deeper into the cycle of poverty? Or is it just a recession? Tell us what you think on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @VOA Our Voices. We're also on WhatsApp. Our number is on the screen. It's time for another quick break. When we come back, we'll bring you this week's Women to Watch segment with Simanesh Mangesha. Stay with us.
We're bringing women's voices to the conversation, and more than that, we're building a community of inclusion and empowerment.
Here in Kinshasa, campaigns to raise awareness against the spread of coronavirus are common, but getting that information to people who have no access to water, electricity, or money can be a challenge.
We are here at Kalerwe Market in Uganda, Kampala, where in this whole market, women are crying out for their situations to change.
For women, it will be better for us.
I think a big thing for me is just being able to say that when these protests are happening, does it turn around into policy?
Our kids are raped every single day.
This movement got the government to listen. It really was powerful because it showed what is possible when men and women band together and say, enough is enough.
It's not necessary anymore to climb on a car. I can be in any place to cheer with the people.
Welcome back. You're with Our Voices. Now it's time for our Women to Watch segment. Take it away, Simanesh.
Thanks, Ndimiake, and hello everyone. I'm happy to bring you this week's Women to Watch segment. According to the International Labour Organization, around the world, more than 75 million people clean, cook, and provide care in private homes. Their work is often demanding, informal, and unregulated. But this could be changing in Senegal because of Marie-Hélène Sagna, the founder of Tilane Academy. Alison Likongo Fernandez reports from Dakar.
Around 7 in the morning, Marie-Hélène Sagna prepares her young daughter for nursery school here in Senegal's capital.
Bravo!
She used to leave by 6 a.m. to work as a housekeeper, usually without job security or benefits.
Longues horaires, il n'y en a pas de contrat.
Long hours. There is no contract, and a lot of bosses don't keep their word. They want to drop you, they will drop you right away.
Ils ne respectent pas leurs paroles. Ils ont envie de t'arrêter, ils vont t'arrêter tout de suite.
Until late in her pregnancy, Sen worked 14-hour days with 2 days off each month, earning less than $170 a month. But now, Sen is enrolled in a training program for domestic workers at the Tilian Academy, refining her cooking and cleaning skills and her professional demeanor. Marie-Hélène Sagna started the academy after spending years in France.
Je considère le travail de maison comme un vrai métier.
I consider housework to be a real job, and because it is a real job, it deserves to be learned like any other job. The goal is to have professionals who will be able to showcase their skills.
Tuition for the 3 months training program is nearly $275. It's often paid for by employers or donors, as in Sen's case. She hopes to improve her skills and earn better wages.
Avant, si tu n'as pas reçu la formation, tu demandes un certain salaire, on te dit que...
If you asked for a certain salary without any training, you probably wouldn't get that amount. But with training, God willing, it's possible.
Mashallah.
After training, Sagna works to connect graduates with employers and helps set terms of employment.
On ne place pas les employés n'importe où.
We select an employer who will meet our working conditions. We do not place employees anywhere. We have an hourly rate to be respected. Our main interest is to establish a win-win relationship.
L'intérêt principal, c'est d'essayer d'établir une relation gagnant-gagnant.
Employer pays the academy a commission and management fee for each placement. Nana Plea, who is looking for a domestic help, supports worker protections and fair compensation.
Il devrait y avoir quand même une réglementation.
Help these women. What I see is slavery. They eat after everyone else. They go to bed after and get up before everyone else.
Parce qu'elles mangent après. Elles se couchent après, elles se lèvent avant tout le monde.
Tilian Academy and other employment agencies in Dakar hope to change that by improving skills and working conditions. For VOA News, Alison Legogo-Fernandez, Dakar, Senegal.
Thanks, Alison. Marie-Hélène Sagna is definitely helping domestic workers pull themselves out of the grips of poverty in Dakar through her Tilian Academy. She's truly a woman to watch. That was it for today. Until next time, I am Simanish Egoye.
Thank you, Simanish. And that is where we're going to end our show this week. Remember to keep up with the latest news on the VOA website at voanews.com. Thank you to my colleagues here on Our Voices and on behalf of everyone at the Voice of America. I'm Dumyake Mwakaliele. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.